If you're trying to create watercolor paintings you're actually proud of, but they never really turn out the way you imagined, it's not because you're untalented, and it's definitely not because you're lazy or you're not practicing enough. After helping thousands of students move from frustrated watercolor beginners to confident watercolor artists who now can successfully create their own paintings from scratch, I identified the number one thing that was actually holding them back. And it wasn't effort or talent. The problem was that they hadn't really learned the system that makes watercolor actually work. Basically, they didn't learn the art of creating a watercolor painting. But once they actually understood this system, they were able to use techniques on purpose, make decisions that actually made a difference, and finally see their ideas come to life on paper. So in this video, I want to show you why your painting results might feel unpredictable, the hidden mistakes quietly sabotaging your progress, and also exactly how to start creating your own watercolor painting successfully. So every time you pick up your brush, you're moving closer to the artwork you want to create. And here's an easy way to think about it. Watercolor works a lot like baking a cake, because if you want a cake to turn out well, you need the right ingredients, you need the right ingredients in the right amounts, mixed in the right order, and also baked for the correct amount of time, right? So if you change one thing, like adding too much liquid, maybe set the wrong temperature, or hold something for too long or not long enough in the oven, or if you just skip one step altogether, the cake might not turn out the way it was supposed to, right? And not because baking is this mysterious thing, it's actually a system, and watercolor is the same. Because you have, for example, pigments, water, brush, paper, and drying time, and they constantly interact with each other. So if you change one thing, the result changes as well. And the problem is that most beginners are changing everything at once without realizing it. So let's break down the 3 biggest reasons your watercolor results might inconsistent and what to do instead. Now, what I've noticed over the years of teaching watercolor painting is that most beginners are constantly switching between brushes, paints, and papers, thinking that a new tool will magically help them improve faster. And I get it. If you see different artists use different things, it's easier to believe that if I just get what they have, it will change everything magically. But when your tools are always changing, you actually never really learn how to work with them. You never learn how they behave, or what to expect from them, or what their limits are. Think of it like a relationship, right? If you're, for example, were meeting someone new every day, you'd never really get to know them. You wouldn't know what they like, how they behave, what makes them tick, and like what to pay attention to, because you need time with the same person to really understand and get to know them, right? And watercolor is the same, because every brush, paper, and paint behaves differently. So if you keep switching all the time, you'll never really develop that muscle memory. Like you wouldn't know like how the brush really feels in your hand, how much water or pigment to use, or how the paper responds in different situations and with different techniques. It's like sometimes you use this paint and all of a sudden you have too much paint, and then you use the other set and all of a sudden you need to really work hard to get the pigment out. One brush just holds too much water, too little water. This one paper falls apart. This one is also kind of behaves differently. So you always have this moving target. What actually happens as a result is that your results never really feel predictable, and you might even start blaming yourself for not being talented enough. And the fix is quite simple. You want to stick with one set of good quality supplies long enough to really get to know them. So you want to start paying attention to how they respond to water, different pressure, timing, different techniques and tools. And once you get used to how to use your supplies and how they behave in different situations, you can actually properly focus on the medium itself, and that's when real progress begins. And if you're not sure what supplies you need to actually set yourself up for success, or if you're wondering if what you have is actually slowing you down, then make sure to check out the link below this video for my free guide on watercolor supplies. Now, even with high quality tools that you consistently use, your paintings might still feel unpredictable. And what I've found over the years of teaching watercolor painting is that the number one reason is that most beginners don't truly understand or pay attention to how watercolor behaves. Again, think of it like baking a cake. You know that ingredients matter, so you know that if you add too much sugar, it will be too sweet. If you add too much salt, it will be too salty. And if you add too little flour, then probably everything won't hold or it will be just too sticky. But you know that they're important. So if you are, for example, just dumping everything together without paying attention to the quantities or the timing of what you put into your cake when you're making it, the results will be unpredictable and the cake might not turn out the way you wanted it. And watercolor is literally colored water. So you have your pigment plus water, and they also interact with your brush and paper, all while drying is happening in the background. So for example, if you use too much water on your paper at the wrong moment, you'll get patchy results. And if you use too little pigment, your painting might look very washed out and flat. And if you layer too soon or too late, colors will become muddy or just fail to blend. And most beginners never really notice these interactions, and it's totally understandable because when you're just starting out, you don't know what you don't know, especially these nuances of watercolor. So in the end, it's like listening to someone while you're distracted or multitasking. You kind of nod along, but you don't really hear the details or the important nuances that really matter, or you also just don't remember half of what they said. And with watercolor, you need focus. So you really want to pay attention to how the paper reacts or how it even looks when it starts to dry, and also how pigment moves and settles, and what happens when you add paint at different times and maybe even with different paint consistencies, while also paying attention to how much or how little water is in your brush. So you really want to slow down and start observing this medium and also the tools you're using instead of just, following steps on autopilot. And this is something I help my students to practice all the time, because once they see these interactions and start paying attention to them as they practice, they're not really just, they're no longer just guessing and hope for the best. They can actually predict how the paint will behave and also make adjustments intentionally if something doesn't go according to plan. Now, even if you have good supplies and also understand how watercolor behaves, you might still be missing something very crucial that you usually don't really get from random tutorials. If you think about it, when you follow a tutorial, most of the decisions were already made for you. The artist has already tested techniques, adjusted the timing, chosen the colors you need, and also figured out the steps in which order to paint everything. So you basically just follow along and do what they tell you, like use yellow here, add blue there, do this here. And you might successfully recreate that one painting, but you wouldn't really know how to apply the same principles or the same steps in a different project. So it's really no wonder you might feel like you're just following tutorials and you're never able to paint something on your own that you're happy with, because you're not really learning why things work or how these pieces connect. You might even start feeling like you're just, painting inside the lines, following instructions, and not really learning anything for yourself. And watercolor isn't just about, learning individual techniques or how each ingredient behaves. It's about connecting all of this, deciding when to add water or pigment, which layer goes first, how to adjust when something unexpected happens, and really applying that understanding to your own painting. So you can actually create your own paintings from scratch. Because without understanding the reasoning behind each step, your knowledge stays really abstract. Like if you would, for example, memorize math formulas without really knowing what they mean. And once you really learn the principles and understand the principles behind each decision, you stop blindly copying tutorials. You can actually predict results and make adjustments, and then also create with confidence. And this is exactly what happens with my students once they've learned the system and also build their skills. And here's the thing, even if you understand the principles of watercolor, know your watercolor supplies and know how they behave, and also stop blindly following tutorials, there's still one big reason people get stuck. And it happens before you even touch your brush. So watch this video next, where I'll show you exactly how to prepare in a way that makes you feel confident, relaxed, and ready to create paintings you're proud of.